Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Apostate Aladdin, and the purpose of today's live stream, like all the other live streams before it, is to give ex-Muslims a space to chit chat, talk, and get things off their mind. Especially with Ramadan being here, happy Ramadan to those who celebrate, and happy Ramadan to those who don't celebrate but are forced to. I wish you a happy time either way. And because of Ramadan, the timing of the live stream has shifted a little bit because I'm trying to accommodate as many people as possible from different time zones. So keep an eye on my page, on my YouTube page, because that's where I announce where the next when the next live stream is going to be. I also announce it in my stories on Instagram, so follow me there if you don't. I barely use Instagram, but it is helpful for these kinds of announcements. So for this month, I'll be doing a bunch more live streams and videos. So make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And next week on Sunday as well, we will have a special guest. Or is it Sunday or Saturday? Well, you'll have to notice on the channel page. We'll have a special guest, and it's not going to be a call-in live stream, but you'll get to join in the live chat and talk to the guests and I and ask us questions and share your stories there as well. And for those of you watching not live, there are going to be timestamps for these live streams. So if you want to listen to a particular caller, you can skip to that caller. And before we begin, I'd like to share some resources that one of the recurring callers and supporting members of the channel, thanks to Stars, has made this list for anyone who is struggling and needs to get some help, specifically for ex-Muslims. I'll leave the list in the description as well, or if you'd like to take a screenshot, here it is. And Stars might touch during the call. She might touch on what you could get out of these organizations and charities and how they could help you possibly. So, without further ado, I will start with the first caller. The queue is still open, by the way, if you'd like to join. Link is pinned to the live chat, but I will be closing the queue very soon because we have a bunch of callers already. So, Stars, I hope you are ready because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Hiya, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
That's great. Thank you for sharing the resources I messaged you with. Those ones specifically, I put them together in mind with these specific ones help men as well as women, because I know there is a bit of a gap with charities that also cater to men. So one of these, I think, Breaking the Silence, is specifically for men. I can't quite remember which one is which, but all of them do help men as well as women. I will be messaging Aladdin with more for different places later.
Well, we really appreciate you making this list, especially ones that also cater to men. Because, yeah, though statistically women are more likely to be harmed in these situations, also men do need help sometimes. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure. So Placarded and I met through one of the ex-Muslim servers on Discord, and
for those who don't know, Placarded is another ex-Muslim who can't be on the call with us today.
Oh yeah. And we talked about your streams, and they mentioned wanting to come in, but they were concerned that their family might hear them, unfortunately, which is stopping them from being able to talk. So I offered to share what they wanted to say for them. So yeah, hi Placarded. This is for you. They're a 15-year-old male from North Africa. They said, my journey leaving Islam starts when I was 11, when I discovered that I was gay. I started looking into what Islam said about that, and settled on the belief that the attraction isn't the sin, but acting upon it is the sin. This affected me a lot, though, because of the fact that I would have to stay celibate, and I started praying to Allah to make me straight. After a while, I gave up on it and started looking into atheist YouTube. This was when I was around 13. I gradually gave up on the idea of God, but I had a huge fear of hell. So it took me a bit of time, but then I finally just left Islam. Leaving hasn't affected me very much, as I wasn't very attached to the religion, and it has made me more open-minded about issues in the world. A lot of my friends and family are openly homophobic and show hatred towards non-Muslims, and that makes me really sad. I emphasize with everyone. Empathize with everyone around me, as I know they never chose to be Muslims. So my sadness and anger are mostly directed towards the religion itself. One of the biggest problems that has been on my mind a lot is if I ever get the chance to live in a secular country, how I would manage my relationships with my family and friends, because I know that I really don't want to let go of them, but it would be very hard to live a double life and lie to them, having to act Muslim. I don't know if I'll ever come out to them, and even now, still with living here, I feel very hypocritical when I started to quote unquote pray recently, and seeing how proud my family is of that saddens me so much. There's a big chance that they won't accept me, but I really want to live my truth with the people I love and care about. If only they could see beyond Islam, beyond the lies that they've been told their entire lives. I always think I sound really egotistical when I say stuff like that. I know the truth and you're also blind, etc., even though I'm not trying to. That's the end of what he sent me.
Well, it's difficult to believe that a 15-year-old wrote this because it sounds very well written. So kudos to them for, being to him for being that well spoken, and I really empathize with him. And no, he doesn't come off as egotistical at all. And I feel like that awareness is a sign that he's not being egotistical. But it's good to reflect on your thoughts. What do you think, Stars? Because I know you've been in contact with this person. What's on your mind?
It's so sad that he's struggling with the fear of losing his family just for being who he is. And it's sad that it's a danger to, like, a potential danger to him if ever he does want to come out. And I just wish we sort of lived in a better world where this kind of thing wasn't necessary.
Yeah, I agree. He brings up a very good point that even when one does get some freedom, or if they go to a secular country and get to be more like themselves, there's still the difficulty of choosing whether to live a double life or how to present yourself with your family. And I wish I knew the formula for that. It's tricky. Yeah.
I do hope that Placarded gets to come on here someday and share his own story, because I'm sure we'd all love to hear. Obviously, all I've got is what he sent me. And I'm sure he could add a lot more nuance to this kind of discussion.
Well, if Placard is in the comments, if you'd like to say anything, and we'll add it to the live stream, where I'll be happy to do that. Well, I got to say that I don't lose hope. And I know that wherever you are in the world, there are a lot of people like you around you, even if they're not easy to spot yet. But hopefully, you'll be able to find more people who are, if not like you, just accepting of you and not intolerant, because that's what people are asking for. Though I don't exactly like the word tolerance, because it implies that there's something to be tolerated there. But yeah, people who don't see your difference as something worthy of condemnation or punishment or whatever it may be.
So I'm gonna end off with an update on the caller I spoke about last time. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be happy news. So the last time I spoke to her was on Wednesday. Well, the last time I actually had a conversation with her would have been Tuesday, and then she messaged me early morning Wednesday saying family protection services are at her house and they want to take her to the station to speak with her. And then she's gone dark everywhere since then. She's not been active on Twitter. She's not been active on Instagram. She's not been active on Reddit. She hasn't messaged me at all. I tried contacting the embassy, and the embassy said, "You're not family, so due to data protection and everything like that, we can't give you any info. And the most we can do is try and reach out to her to get her consent to give you information." So I'm feeling kind of stuck here. I think the most we can do is, as a community, try and make noise on Twitter at the right people, at the embassy, everything like that. But I personally am at the end of the line, I think, with managing to get info.
Can you remind me again of her Twitter handle? I will
Yeah, her
post
Twitter
it here as
handle
well.
is help free me one. One as in the number or one word.
Yeah, I feel like if I feel like my hands are tied, I can only imagine how you feel like when you've been trying so hard. Um,
Yeah, it's the same response with the forced marriage unit of the UK. Every time I call someone up, it's you're not her family, you're not entitled to any information about her. And obviously she can't call the embassy to give them consent. She doesn't have a SIM card or anything like that. And I haven't heard anything since then. I've been checking her socials, but she's not been active anywhere.
I really hope that that somehow means that she's at least away from her family.
Yeah, I'm thinking they might have taken her phone away, which was the only way that she could talk to me. Um, so yeah, I will keep trying to get in touch with her, obviously, and I'll keep checking her socials and I'll update you all if I hear anything.
Please do. And
Yeah.
yeah, I hope that this doesn't discourage you from your plans to work on
No,
a
it,
way
if
to help
anything, it
people in that
if
situation.
anything,
Yeah.
it makes my conviction in it stronger. I just need to figure out a way to do this without compromising my own identity because this kind of project is the kind of thing that's going to make a lot of people very angry. And then there's also I need to consider my family being able to potentially find me through something like this.
Right.
So I need to figure out a way to do it. There are ways for me to stay protected, I believe. I kind of just need to prove that I need to my identity to stay secret. Which shouldn't be a problem, but we'll see where it goes. I'm also in the middle of moving to a new place, so I might need to get established there before I start doing any more for the charity.
Of course. I know it might feel like you have to rush to do things because, of course, there are people who need help every day, and every day that the charity is not there feels like you're missing out on helping people. But I hope you don't let that anxiety drive you into a bad place where you don't end up doing what you planned on doing. So take your
Yeah,
time with it.
just
You know.
I have
Yeah.
years of my life that I can dedicate to helping people, so as long as I can keep my identity safe while doing it, I will do it. Um, well, I'll end off here and make way for the other callers. Thank you for listening, everybody. I hope anyone who needs those resources can use them. And yeah, like I said, I'll update you if I hear anything more from M.
Please do. Yeah,
All right.
please do. Thanks for calling again, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. I'll be in chat. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again to Stars. And I just saw a comment from Placarded, um, the first person that Stars was talking about. I just wanted to add that I've been trying recently to appreciate the moments with family and friends because these years might be the last I'll be with them. That is very wise of you and level headed. And it makes me a little bit sad that a 15-year-old would have to think about that and factor that in. Um, yeah, but I'm glad that you have a positive attitudes towards it and that you're trying to make the best of it. I really appreciate that you have shared this with us. Yeah, because of my constant exposure to a lot of negative cases and scenarios, my reaction would be concern and realism, maybe pessimism. So I'm happy to hear from the people themselves and how they're handling it and how they're handling it better than I would expect, and I would think that I would handle it myself. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, I'll read a few comments before I get to the next callers. Let's see. This commenter is saying Prophet Star. With the amount of work that Star has put into helping other people, yeah, she deserves, I don't know, a saint title or whatever it may be. Branan says, "Hey, I'm also a North African bisexual male. I just learned how to live with the fact that my family will never accept me as I am. So I just hide that part of my life from them." Yeah, um, that is unfortunately what a lot of people have to do. But hopefully, with time, either you'll find enough people that you get to be yourself around, that this doesn't bother you as much, or it doesn't become as necessary to be yourself around your family, as sad as that sounds. But um, I hope the best for you. So I had announced in a community post that there's a guest caller in a live stream next week. I you know Stay tuned in the channel to find out who. But Potato Apostate says, "Is it just me, or does the silhouette of the guest speaker look like Adalbon?" I'll let you take your guesses till I announce who the guest is. Noor Storn says, "Face reveal." Um, Probably not, but I was thinking about that as Stars was talking about how to start some kind of organization to help people in need, you have to disclose your identity, obviously, for legal purposes. And I would expect that, in a public facing forum, you would have to have your identity known. I wonder if someday I would be forced to do that. I don't know. Herman says, "I'm not a Muslim, but I have fasted a couple of times in the past. Always a shorter period and always only liquid for 3 to 6 days. Ramadan, though, has nothing to do with fasting." Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. You see a lot of articles and videos and whatnot about the benefits of fasting, the benefits of fasting. Make sure to look into the sources of that information, because more often than not, it'll be a study about a different kind of fasting, like intermittent fasting or something of the sort. And even those, I don't know if I've seen conclusive proof. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not someone who's been interested in the regime of fasting for improving health. So I can't say definitively whether there is a benefit to fasting intermittently or some other kind of regime like that or not. But I know for certain that dehydration is not good for you. So dehydration every day, leave alone the food. If you just dehydrate yourself every day, you might get kidney stones. You might get a lot of other problems. So definitely not the same thing as whatever fasting fad or study people are talking about. Let me get to the next caller then. We've got a few more callers in queue. I think I am about to close the queue very soon. Or no, I think we have enough callers to close the queues. Thank you so much. We've just started. So I will be doing that right now. The next caller is, let's see, give me a moment, please. I'm not on top of my game today. Dunya, I hope you are ready, because I am adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Dunya, how's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you fine.
Okay, I'm fine. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for asking. So, what would you
Well,
like to talk about today?
yeah, I'm actually very, very nervous. My heart is racing. I wasn't expecting that, and I've been thinking about um, what I'm going to talk about and how I start. Um, just a short resume of my life. Like, I came as a young child to Europe. I'm from an Arab family where my background is Muslim, but as a child already, I left Islam basically because in religious education, they taught us that Christian children would go to hell and they would need to convert to Islam. So for me, it was done back then already. And so I'm actually kind of a literal revert. I was, yeah, like a year ago, 1.5 years ago, I was in a very unstable moment in my life, and I kind of got into the Arab Muslim community, and they were very welcoming with open arms, and I was so overwhelmed with that. And I was also very impressed with their strong iman. And I was like, okay, I gotta give this another chance, because there's gotta be something out there. And I was actually suffering from my atheism. I'm not an happy atheist. Um, so I started reading the Quran. I told my father that I'm finally a Muslim. He was so happy, which was actually very hurting, because he wasn't there for like 25 years of my life. And when I told him that I was going to try to be a Muslim, he was like, oh my God, I prayed for this my whole life. And it was actually very hurting, because I was like, okay, you prayed for me. You weren't there for 25 years, but you prayed for me. That's the most you could do. Um, and yes, as I was reading through the stuff, I always continued to watch Apostate Prophet and channels like that, just to keep myself in check, just to keep both sides present. But still, I realized how I started to how I started to defend concepts that were not mine, like why homosexuality is wrong, why it's okay that women have to live in a certain way, and that I started to adapt the same rhetoric, that it was very normal, like when you're among Muslims, to hear comments about homosexuals. It was, and always the Yehudi, like that's one of the best insults they have, to call someone a Yehudi, a Jew.
Yehudi means Jewish, by the way, for people who don't know. Or Jew,
And and the thing is, of course, there's very beautiful customs, and to be honest, like it kind of felt beautiful when I started praying and stuff like that. But my critical thinking couldn't let go of the fact that something is not quite right about it. So the thing is, I fell in love also then with a Muslim guy, and I fell very deep into it. And for 1 year, I was quite stuck into that. And he is very, very, very extremist on his way of thinking. And the last time I saw him, I was like, I gotta confront him. That was when I already decided I can't be a Muslim. I was like, can you explain this to me? Can you explain this to me? It's in Sahih Bukhari that your prophet, the best person on earth, married a 6-year-old. How can you defend this? And or that it's cutting off the hand of someone who stole something. And of course his reaction was, you don't get to talk about my deen. He was so proud of himself. He was in La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah and Allahu Akbar. That was like, it's like, it's not, I don't get to question why I feel like it's insulting and dangerous for me as a woman to read all that stuff. But I'm the one who insulted him by daring to question it. And he said stuff like that. If I would ever marry a girl, she needs to bleed on her first day, on our first day. And I want the kind of woman who, if I tell her to die, she's going to die on the spot. And I realized, like, falling in love is just the same as a cognitive dissonance as being religious, because I knew it all along, but I was so in love with that person that I just couldn't let go. And now I'm like, I know I'm gonna lose the whole group of friends that I made in the last year, because they were open and welcoming. But I already told one, like my closest friend, that I'm sorry, but I can't believe in that. And she's been not really calling me lately. So it's like, for me, so hard to understand how loving a person can be, but then with the same amount of certainty say like it's disgusting what gay people do and stuff like that. I just, when you see how great of a friend they can be and how great of parents they can be, and then at the same time they're so sure about themselves that it's not inhumane what they're saying about other people. And I realized that I got a special treatment as long as I called myself a Muslim, but I will not have that anymore. And so for me, I think it was always very difficult growing up in a European country. I never quite found my identity. I was always in between the two cultures, and I think I kind of gotta accept it, that it's just not gonna happen. I'm just not fully European. I will never be, but yeah, you can't ask questions with Muslims. You're just not allowed because they're holding on to it. So it's, I mean, for many refugees, it's everything they got. For Syrian refugees, it's all they got because they have a horrible life, and I understand it. But it's still a lie. It's still a lie. And I now study Oriental studies because I decided to do that also to learn my mother language better, because I didn't learn to read and write, and also to have some more academic insight. And I'm like, it's all there. It's the history is all there, the wars and the slavery. But then when I ask my Muslim friend who studied Islamic studies, and I ask her, what about slavery in Islam? She's like, no, that doesn't exist. Slavery is forbidden in Islam. Because a slave normally doesn't have any rights, and in Islam they have rights. It's like, you're lying to me. But I feel like the traitor. I feel like the backstabber now, because they treated me so good, and I feel like I'm going behind their backs now.
Oh, what are you doing behind their backs?
Yeah.
Well,
And I'm
what do you
so,
feel like you're
like,
doing?
I feel like I'm starting all over.
Sorry, can you hear me? Are you there?
Exactly. Yeah, I can hear you, but that's exactly the point where I feel like I'm choking. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but there's a big delay,
Hello?
so yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Should I just keep on talking? And
Sure, I'll
I
ask you
feel like
questions.
I'm choking on myself because it's like they trust. I feel like they trusted me with their most intimate belief, and I was trying to be on with them. And now that I decided this cannot be the most humane religion on earth, I feel the need to talk to somebody. That's why I'm here today also. And because sometimes I still like question myself, did I really understand it right? Did I really put everything in the right context? But if I just don't trust myself somehow, that I'm assessing everything right. But I mean, I guess there is a reason why my mother, I will never forget this. When I was 12 years old, she told me, don't you dare ever considering wearing the hijab. Later, I found out my mom is not alive anymore, but later I found out from my father that my mother was actually always a silent apostate, a silent atheist. And she was trying to protect me from that. And we never had anything to do with Arab people or Muslims, just because she wanted me to protect me from that. And because she already knew there is no in between. Like either you're fully with them and you're a Muslim, or you need to just live a life in separation.
I can relate a lot to what you said about, I mean, a lot of this, but especially the identity crisis. Um, I've had more of an Arab background than you, it seems like, or more immersion in Arab culture than you have, and yet I still, even before I had left the Middle East, I still felt like there was something different about me, even before I could acknowledge that I don't believe in Islam anymore. Even when that was not an option, I felt like there was something about me that's just not like everybody else, or not like how most people are behaving or thinking. Um, I was, for example, homophobic because that's what I got used to. I was anti Semitic, but I was very uncomfortable with it. And I didn't understand for the longest time what is it that's different about me, and I still don't. I'm not exactly sure what it is. And now it feels like I've never tried strongly to belong in another group. It's not like I've tried to belong with the people around me and I got rejected, and now I feel like I'm in between two worlds. The people around me are pretty accepting, but it still feels like there's something different about me. And I think that with time, and especially with more people like you and me appearing and integrating into society and maybe having our own, little niche corners, it'll be easier, because unfortunately Islam has dominated our cultures and ethnicities and countries. It has become ingrained with the identity, and a lot of the negative ways of thinking, or the mechanisms that allow people to believe, are used to perpetuate other bad habits and beliefs. And but I think that people are snapping out of religion with time, and hopefully that'll also snap them out of their anti-Semitism and homophobia and everything else. But I want you to know that you're not backstabbing anyone. So it's hard when you're in that situation to be objective about it, because of course, because you're invested in it, and you were love bombed by those people. They gave you a lot of love and attention and care, and it's a sense of community and belonging. But you yourself feel uncomfortable with it, like what you described, that you're not, that you wouldn't go along with. Even if you tried to just hide your identity forever and just placate them and say yes to everything that they say, you won't feel comfortable with them. So you're not backstabbing them. Even if they shared intimate secrets with you, it's not like you're going around and sharing them with other people or using that information against them. You're not obligated to be in a community or be close to someone just because they were close to you at some point, or because they shared something important with you. Um, and just because everyone else is behaving a certain way, you don't have to behave that way too. And yeah, there's a delay in communication here, so I know it's not easy to have a back and forth. So I'll let you say what's on your mind again.
Yes, I think maybe one of the reason why I feel like I'm backstabbing is because, yeah, they're telling me, of course, about their experiences of, especially like women with wearing the hijab, how they're being treated, and they have experience like they're being spit at, they're being pushed in the railway station and stuff like that. And these are real experiences. And now I feel like I'm telling them, but they are wrong. I feel like I'm victim blaming, and that's the last thing I want to do. And so I guess it comes somehow from that, because there has been, like, racism is real against Muslim. Like, I have a different opinion than Apostate Prophet, because he says no, they don't experience any racism and everything is fine, they get everything. No, because even I, as a non-religious person, I experienced racism, and sometimes because of the fact that they thought I was Muslim, and so yes, and I don't know how we can like be very how we can draw this very defined line between Islamophobia and being critical towards Islam, because the phobia against these people exists, but then again it's like, okay, but you do have a certain way of thinking that is also very harmful to people, and people die from it every day. And there is a reason why, for some people, why they choose to come to live here and demand that their demand that they can live their religion freely, but at the same time they would never accept in their own country the same freedom of expression, and they would look the other way if, for example, I don't know, somebody got publicly punished. So I don't know.
Well, something I want to say about that. I think I do my very best to make sure that when I talk about a topic, I'm being as clear and as nuanced as I can be. And I've made it very clear to people before that none of my videos are meant to incite hate towards people. Um, and and I make it very clear that I don't like the ideology, and I make it very clear that I don't like the label Islamophobia because it conflates a very valid and I think substantiated fear or dislike of Islam with just spitting on anyone wearing a hijab, which has never been a way to deal with anything, let alone there's nothing here to be dealt with that this person who's being aggressive is trying to fix. They're not doing it to confront the problem of Islamic oppression against women or whatever. They're doing it because, I don't know, there are many reasons. Like they hate outsiders, or they have certain issues in their area that they're blaming outsiders for, or they've had certain encounters with Muslims that they don't like, or they're just racist and they're looking for anyone to blame for their problems. There are many reasons. I try to do my best to make sure that I'm not giving those people fuel, and at the same time, there are Muslims who listen to me and they say, yes, these are all valid problems. What I want to highlight, though, that you touched on is things that Muslims themselves would be okay with. If we count the, I would never deny that there are people who would actively try to harm Muslims just by their appearance or by knowing that they're Muslim, and I've always said that that's a wrong thing. But if we were to count the instances of a hijabi woman being assaulted, which is one is too many, but then compared to the instances of a Muslim or ex-Muslim woman in the same country, in the same secular country, being assaulted by her own family members, I guarantee you violence in the household trumps that every single time. That's not to say that we shouldn't condemn or try to stop people from harming random hijabis on the street, but let's not give it all the attention and pretend that the other one doesn't happen at all, or the other one is the exception and this is the epidemic. That's partly how I feel about it.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, you have more insight on that because you grew up in the Arab world. I didn't. I just know stories, and I know it happened, and I know that my mother got abused for 7 years in her marriage, and her jaw broken and everything, and she couldn't get out of her marriage, and she said, just wait for us to get to Europe, and the first thing I will do is divorce you. So yeah, I know. I just feel like I hope that maybe it was an exception, but it's not, and I just have to come to terms with it that unfortunately my background is not as progressive or not at the point where I wished it to be, even though I have a very strong yearning and strong need to belong to it. Yeah.
Well, I suggest something here. Um, one way that you can derive pride or something positive out of that is to think about how you were given all the ingredients to turn out to be not like the person that you are today. That, given your background, given all the bad ideas that are, in the community around you that you want to belong in, despite all of that, you do not stand for these bad values. You found a way to be more empathetic and to be better than that. And that's something to be proud of and something to celebrate.
I know, but it's just sometimes so hard because I feel like I'm being punished for it because it's just a very lonely life. I'm sorry for crying,
It's okay.
but yeah, it's a very, very lonely life. But yeah, as you said, like I'm proud of it because what are the odds that I turned out to be like I am, and I just need to stay firm on what I'm convinced, and I got to that point because of my own reflections and not because a book told me so. And because I was forced to always check back and forth between two different cultures, um, and I already, like, I knew from when I was young that there is no default system of ruling that is just per se the right one. I'm sorry, it's also difficult for me. English is not my native language, so I'm trying.
It's okay. There's no need to apologize for anything. You said you were very nervous when you called, yet you were able to share so much today, and you should also be proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your work, and I will be watching you. Yeah, for me it's like I really need this community. It's right now, it's the only thing that keeps me going.
I'm I'm both sad and happy to hear that. I hope that someday you don't need it anymore, but till then, I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you. And yeah, that's it. Thank you very much.
I hope you have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.
Bye. I'm sorry, I need a moment. Yeah, I have some thoughts that I wanted to share, but I wanted to give the caller the space to talk about whatever she felt like talking about first. So I'll read a few comments and then I'll get back to some of the stuff that I wanted to touch on, and then I'll get to the next caller. Okay says, I feel sometimes I want to go back to Islam, but I know it's because I feel alone. I understand that, and a lot of us here do. Like I've said about this before, we try to go back for, if the community is what we yearn, or if we've found some semblance of peace, or if we think that if only we were Muslim, things would be so peaceful or much better. You could always try that. But very often you'll find that you can't deceive yourself, which is ironically uh, what you're accused of doing, right? Kafir, a disbeliever, is like lying to the other person or deceiving themselves or something of the sort. But that would be what you'd do if you go back to the religion. You can always try, but it's not like they've come up with new answers to the major issues that are in the religion since then, or solutions to the systemic problems in Muslim communities that magically aren't fixed by Islam but made worse by it somehow. that other places have figured out how to resolve better. Yeah, that is unfortunate. Dana says, how can they allow themselves to be anti-Semitic when all their scriptures are copied from Jews? Hypocrisy. Something I want to say funny, but it's morbid funny in a morbid way about that. There was an instance. Trigger warning. This is going to be a bit about death and capital punishment. An instance of a Jewish woman who had a child out of wedlock or was pregnant out of wedlock, and she apparently went to the Prophet Muhammad and told him about her crime that she committed. And according to that narration, Muhammad asked her, "You sure you want to be punished?" And she said, "Yes, I'm sure I want to be punished." And he said, "Well, have your child first that you're pregnant with, and then we'll talk about this." And then that happened, and then she still wanted to be punished somehow. So either she was crazy or very devoutly religious and believed that she deserved to be stoned to death for her crime, or the story is false and she wasn't begging Muhammad to stone her to death. But according to the narrative, he then stoned her to death, or a bunch of people did, but by his command, as a punishment for the adulterer. And what's morbidly funny here is that one point that the apologists make is that was the Jewish law, that was the law in Judaism, and Muhammad was just following that law for her, and it might have been incorporated into Islam. There are other instances of things that were straight up taken from Judaism that Muhammad saw Jews doing and said, they fast that day? No, we should fast that day. That is their excuse, that he stoned a woman to death because it was in Judaism. But Islam is built on Judaism, whether admittedly or not, it is built on Judaism, just like Christianity is as well. So, yeah. Let's see, what else did I want to touch on? Yeah, so we were talking about, or the caller mentioned a few things. Like, for example, the punishment of cutting a thief's hand. And a lot of apologists say, well, there has to be, I don't know how many witnesses, 3 or 4 witnesses, and the criteria to fulfill it is so severe that it's just, or so high that it's just meant to be a deterrent or something of the sort. And without getting into all that stuff, I feel like we put a lot of emphasis on the most extreme examples of barbaric punishment, and in some cases, not even punishment for a crime, but for what is thought to be a religious crime or moral crime from a religious point of view, that we sometimes lose track of or lose focus of everything else in between. So when people talk about the capital punishment for someone leaving Islam or chopping limbs off, apologists often say, well, it doesn't happen anymore, or like it's just meant to be a deterrent. How many, what's the statistics on that? Aside from the fact that it's hard to get statistics on some of these things, it's about, there's a lot more harm that's done in between just decapitating someone and not decapitating them. But there's also harm from putting it in stone as a concept, as a rule, as something that is good, even if you don't follow up on it. It's a bigger problem than just how many people did Saudi Arabia decapitate last year. Well, maybe they stopped, but does it change the fact that if you believe that someone deserves killing for a certain thing, it doesn't change how you treat them or how you see the world? Of course it does. So as much as we bring up these instances of extreme punishment or extreme, it's not even, like I said, sometimes it's not even about punishment for an actual crime. We have to not lose track of how it's about the principle itself, not just how many times did it happen. It's hard for people to believe, for a lot of people to believe, that God thought that the best course of action when you have a society that has a problem with theft or whatever is to start chopping off hands as a fear tactic. Because obviously, people will find a way around the theft. They'll just be better at theft. but there's no room for rehabilitation there. Like, it's obvious that the person who came up with this is not a god. So yeah, keep in mind this kind of nuance, that don't get sidetracked into just arguing how many people were officially killed under Islamic rule, blah blah blah. It's forgetting the point that this is actually a rule or not. Same about the caller mentioned slavery and wars, and a response to that by a lot of apologists would be, well, which civilization has not had slavery and wars? And I want to make it clear that I'm not asking, and I don't think the caller either, most people aren't asking Muslims to answer for the crimes of their ancestors or anything. Um, in that way, I am culpable. I'm Arab, and Arabs have seeped into a lot of cultures, and that's just putting it lightly. The point isn't, for at least not in the context of my videos or live streams, it's not about reparations or shaming, but it's to remind people that the belief system that is supposed to be a peace for everyone and holy and free of all flaws is littered with flaws, and it has caused so much harm in the past. So I want to make that clear. It's not about shaming people for thousands or hundreds of years ago, or even tens of years ago, what their ancestors did. It's about reminding them that their poop stinks too, that it's not a divine and perfect system like we keep hearing. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Yeah, okay. I'll get to the next caller, and then I'll read some comments later. The next caller is Sid. Sid, if you're ready, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Sid, how's it going?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. So the last time I was on the live stream, I was severely medicated and I was rambling, and I couldn't tell you how I found your channel. It's basically a YouTube algorithm. I mean, I was on AP channel and David Ward and Sarah International, and then I came across yours, and yours channel was the most relatable to me because I was just recently denounced the religion, I would say. I mean, okay. So, and the way you deal with the issues is just amazing. I mean, you have such a kind heart. Whether you don't agree with people, it's just I have to appreciate that. Giving us this spot is literally a save, and I cannot express my graciousness for giving us the spot. Now I'm going to start my sad story.
Well,
So
I appreciate you saying all that, and yeah, please go ahead.
Well, I mentioned before on my live stream, I grew up in very extremist religious family, which redeemed to very extreme domestic violence. Like sometimes even my shirt would little bit like up and show skin, and I would get beaten up for that with hanger, wire, anything that's like in the view. I would get beaten up black and blue. For same goes for not praying, same goes not for reading Quran, and like throughout my childhood. I mean, on my live stream, I've last time I've mentioned I've essayed multiple times by my cousins and multiple other instances. So I don't want to go back there. But then even my family was not stable, and so my dad, he used to teach us Quran, and he used to hit us because you're teaching us to read Quran and we're making a mistake and you're beating us up for that. And I always thought I wrote a short story that was published. It was about like my father was beating us black and blue and my mother was not doing anything. So my mother literally hates me beside my other sisters, and since my father passed away, she take the role of the domestic violence. So I don't want to go there, but everything that happened was happening in the name of religion. So here I'll give you an example. I had a very severe depression, clinical depression from very early age, and a very social anxiety. But if I would mention it to anyone, they would say you're mad, retarded, very insulting words. And pray. Yeah, if you want to get cured, pray. Everything is cured by pray. You want to go to doctor? You're a fucking psycho. I am so sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, it's frustrating how prayer is offered as a solution to everything when, yeah, the best it can do is placebo effect, but yeah, that especially doesn't help when you don't believe, but yeah, it is frustrating.
Since last Ramadan, I was in my head, I was like, hey, maybe I made God angry. I went to my family to ask for forgiveness before Ramadan because I wanted to be in their good graces, and pray, pray, pray. Everything is praying. Oh, why don't you get a fever or cancer? Pray, please. Let it cure you. I mean, and I don't know. So I was far gone, and I was finally diagnosed by mild schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. But no one took it seriously. Once again, it's like doctor would advise not to leave her alone. She would have episodes, sometimes manic episodes, sometimes very depressive episode, that so much so that I couldn't even get out of bed. Like, and my mother would say she's acting. She's acting. She's lazy. She doesn't want to do work, and she's acting. This went.
Do you have anyone in your life who believes you and supports you?
Yeah, like some of my father's side, from my father passed away in 2018, so some of my father's sisters, they support me a little bit, like, but I still have to live in this house, but because I don't have any options. And then she brainwashed. Okay, so the biggest thing with me, so before, like I mentioned, I was essayed so many times, and my parents' relationship was an exemplary kind of a relationship. It was, they were constantly fighting and very extreme with fighting. So I didn't have any male example to like to have a marriage. So I was so against marriage, and later I found out I don't like men. And when I say I don't like men, everyone assumes that I'm a lesbian, but I'm not. I just don't. I'm not attracted to anyone because my circumstances have made me this way. I don't want anyone, and I can And so my mom doesn't give me literally anything, like not a single penny that comes from my father's pension or anyone would give me. She wouldn't give me single penny. I'm literally uh, financially supporting myself in every way, like every single way. So, but she's always reading Quran. She's always praying. She's always have this tasbih thing. Do you know tasbih? Yeah.
Mhm.
So like, and like, uh, so that happened, and so last year things got really bad, like really really bad, and I cut myself. Uh, tried to end my life. I was, and it wasn't my first time, but this time I really wanted to just end it because I was my mother turned my sisters even against me so much that they physically, mentally, constantly uh, abused me until my uncle got involved, and just I'm just allowed in just this one room and I cannot like go around any other area of house because they would call me thief, they would call me greedy, they would call me names. Anyway, back to, so this time I vertically cut my hand.
Hey,
And
I would just have to. I'm sorry, but I just have to ask you not to go into details, just in case someone might be
okay, I'm so
triggered by
sorry.
it. That's
I'm so
okay.
sorry. I'm so
It's okay.
sorry. I should have
No
thought
worries.
it. Um, this time I was very, very consistent to make it, but I did it. But that leave a very severe scar. And since I was like I have to make money because no one is giving me single penny, I had to get a job. So one time I went for a job and people saw scars on my hand. I actually almost got the job, but they saw a scar in my hands and they said, they called me and said they choose another candidate. And this happened at least twice, so I decided to get tattoos to hide there. And this is where the weirdest story starts. So I had to change my medication for some reason, and my doctor told me there are going to be some sort of reprehension, that it may have some issues to adjust for a while. So I starting to have, because of this medication, I started to have very severe hallucinations. Like sometimes I would feel like someone is choking me. I'm not gonna go in details. So very very vivid kind of hallucination. And so what did they say? Since she have a tattoo, she cannot do wudu. So Jin is attacking her.
So
Wow.
yeah. That. I mean, I just want to reassure you. Obviously, you know that it's not because of the tattoo, but I
I
want to reassure
know.
you that they would say that whether there's a tattoo or not, there's always going to be some superstitious reason that Jinn had something to do with it. I've experienced that I've seen that around me, unfortunately.
And
Yeah.
I was laughing and I was like, seriously? I mean, you're not concerned about my hallucination. You're saying Jin is attacking me, and I'm like, I'm not even that attractive to Jin to attack me.
Well,
But
that's not a good. Definitely don't go down thinking of it that way. Like, because yeah, it's unfortunate that sometimes they convince people that, like, they convince women that because they're so attractive or because they let their hair down or whatever reason, the jinn was attracted to them, and that's a way of controlling women by their looks. And yeah, and just don't think of yourself as not pretty enough for jinn, or too pretty for jinn. That's not a metric at all. But it's sad and unfortunate that sometimes opening up and asking for help in these communities will get you into more trouble and more superstition and all sorts of rituals to get rid of the jinn and all sorts of stuff. That you seem to be hopefully of sound enough mind that you're not believing this kind of stuff, but it might, in some cases, it might make it worse. Yeah.
I'm also doing PhD in pre-Islamic history, so I'm learning a lot, and I have some conclusion. Maybe some other day I wrote you a message yesterday. It was about I went for an interview in school. I didn't know it was Islamic school, but the incident happens. They saw my tattoos and they say, "Oh, you cannot get the job," even though I aced the interview. Oh my God! And the lady was ulama, and she was like giving me lecture, kind of like, and since I had more information, I said, "Do you know when hadith were released? They were released actually 200 years and 50 years. I mean, so don't give me those references. Also, I don't believe in hadiths. That's like another topic. But I think I've taken a long time. Anyway, so basically, I have for such a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me. So my mom basically told my sisters that she's not getting married, so you guys won't get married, and they start hating me so much. And one of my sister who got married, she had a baby girl who I love with my heart. She made that girl, she was 3 years old. She used to love playing with me, and her mom made that child. Imagine making a child saying that she's not a good person. Like she used worse words, but she made her daughter stop. And whenever now I see her from afar, like there's a fear in her eyes for me, and that hurts so much because I love that baby girl so much. And I remember having depressive episodes, and I used to go to my mom to snuggle, but instead of embracing me, she would say, "Pray," again and again. "Pray, pray." I need someone to just embrace me just for a while. Just say you're gonna be okay. I would have severe panic attacks, but then after that, these people, I mean, literally I don't know. My only crime was I did not get married. That's my crime. And
I'm sorry for all the abuse that you went through. Even whether or not you would have gotten married, it sounds like they were predisposed to do that. And I'm glad that you have the awareness and the mental health, even if it is, you are struggling, and there are a lot of things that you still are struggling with, but you have enough presence of mind to know that this is not your fault. Thankfully, now that none of this is true, what they're saying about you. And for that, I'm very glad.
Yeah, the last time it finally stuck with me, we were having an argument, and I slapped my sister. And my mom, she never hit anyone before. Instead of letting my sister attack me, she did attack me. She even attacked me so much that I got bruises in my stomach and I had to go to the hospital. Anyway, so basically, my mom slapped me, and I was shocked because she never raised her hand because my dad used to do that inside. So that at that moment, I realized I don't need these people. I don't care that they are my blood relative because they don't treat me like a blood relative, and and then and immediately like some kind of blind moved from my eye, and I said, I don't care how alone I am, I am gonna be good enough for me. And I will find some people who feel like me, who have been treated like me. So that was just a gist of it. Anything you wanna say? I'm seriously a huge fan, and I was so excited I cannot express. The like, you send the link 15 minutes before. I was like, okay, now I'm gonna refresh. Um, that's it. I mean, I can express. I'm such a fangirl, having a fangirl moment. Thank you, Aladdin.
Well, what you said, it's very brave of you to take that stance, and I'm happy for you, and I hope that it's all getting better from here. These are very important, not just first steps, but progressiveness in your steps that you've taken to take care of yourself, and I hope that continues. And thank you for all the compliments as well. I'm happy that you find usefulness in this space. Yeah.
Hey, and I just want to give a shout out to Eternal Star. I'm really happy that I found her. She seems amazing, and I hope more of us get together because of you and have some sort of community, sir. So I'm gonna go and give the next caller a chance because I think I talk a lot.
No, you were just fine. Thank you very much for calling today.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Have a great rest of your day, Sid.
You too. You too. You're amazing.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks once again to the caller. Um, I want to read I want to say a couple things, and I'll read a few comments and then get to the next caller. We only have 3 left, but I like to give each caller enough time to tell their story, so should be more than enough for the rest of the stream. One thing I want to note here is, though these stories are difficult to listen to and some people might not relate because their domestic life was not as bad, or maybe not bad at all, you're more than welcome to not listen to a certain story if it distresses you. But please understand that the point of live streams like these is not to try to paint all Muslims as abusive, or to say that if not for Islam, the previous caller's family would have been perfect. But it's important to point out how religion can and does factor into these abusive dynamics. Because even if what certain families, what they do crosses the boundary of what is Islamically allowed, the boundary is far enough that it's bound to be crossed. Like, you're flirting with crossing the boundary. For example, beating your children. If you're Sunni, you're very likely to believe or find out that beating your children for not praying or reading Quran or whatever is Islamically valid. Beating your wife for similar reasons or for fear of disobedience is Islamically valid. So when you flirt with that line, and then you see people going further than just beating without leaving a mark or whatever other silly rationalization apologists give, try not to be intentionally obtuse, because the problem isn't just the extreme cases, or that any extreme cases because of Islam. The problem is the environment that the religion and belief and power dynamics have created that enable, encourage, and eventually lead to these examples. There are so many callers and people who can't call and people who've commented and people we've never heard of that have tragic stories, and when they try to reach out for help, systems put in place by Islamic beliefs stop them from getting help. They get in the way. And that's the problem. It's not to say that every abusive person is because they read the verse and then they became abusive. Not at all. But had it not been for the community that accepts that kind of abuse as part of everyday life, as perhaps even a disciplinary mechanism to do what's best for your family and all that kind of stuff, perhaps there would be more resources to help those people. Perhaps people would think twice before letting the abusers get away with it. That's what's important here. And what the caller mentioned is very, very, very common. People in Quran classes getting beaten for either not doing their homework, for example, like, oh, I didn't memorize this stuff today, or making a mistake while reciting, like they forgot a certain word or they got stuck, or making a mistake in the pronunciation, whether they're Arab or not. That happens, that they get beaten for that. It's not uncommon. It's not a fringe case. And it's not why people leave religion. But sometimes it's a sobering reminder of how ugly it can be. And people who aren't that intimate with religion, who haven't been to Quran classes, who just take it, take the nice quotes and put them on their, Instagram story or wherever it may be. And Allah gives me strength, Allah gives me hope, all that kind of stuff. But they haven't actually lived it, might not have enough experience or time thinking about the religion to get them introspective enough to think about what's wrong with it. So don't confuse correlation in the amount of stories that are told about this kind of abuse and mistreatment to causation of leaving the religion. In many cases, there are a lot of Muslims who would love to tell the same story, but many have told such stories on this channel, on other live streams where I have believers also call in. But more frequently than not, either they think that it's normal and they don't want to air dirty laundry, or they blame themselves for it. Like, yeah, they deserve that beating in Quran class because they made a mistake, or they were too lazy to memorize, or whatever other rationalization they unfortunately would come up with. Or they want to, but they fear the backlash, or they fear that they would be disobeying Allah if they talk about it. So that, in my mind at least, explains a lot of the correlation of hearing these stories from people who have left, because there's less stopping them from sharing these stories. All right, and now we'll get to some comments and then the next caller. Thank you very much for the super chat. Nazone says, as a Palestinian American ex-Muslim, I often wonder what relationship would Muslims have with Jews if Israel didn't exist in Palestine? That's a good question. One that I'm definitely not qualified to even try to give an answer to. I know that a lot of times Israel and crimes that the Israeli government and army have committed, they give ammunition to people to say, see, this is what we said was going to happen about the Jews, or this is why we never trusted the Jews, or this is why insert narrative here. It makes it very easy to say that. So perhaps if Israel did not exist, things would be a little different. But at the same time, this demonization has been going on since way before the 1940s or whenever it was when this first started. This demonization has always been there. So I don't know if it would make a huge discernible difference, or if there would be some other issue that Jews are blamed for fundamentally by birth for. Again, like I said, I'm not qualified to make a guess on that, but yeah, I appreciate you raising the point. Star is Eternal from the first call and the one that the previous caller mentioned says, so much love to all the callers who share their stories and to AA himself. Thank you very much for this very generous super chat. Please, please do not be this generous. You're already expending a lot of time, effort, and energy into helping people. That is more than enough. Thanks for me. And Missanian, sorry, I can't read right now. The font is too small. Messinian Salinity Crisis. Thank you very much for the very generous super sticker. I really appreciate it. And same to Kukli, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce names today, who gifted a membership to someone else. I appreciate that as well. And here we have an ex-Muslim from Palestine. Thanks for making yourself heard. And another very generous donation by Stop Scamming Man. I appreciate it. He says, or they say, there are vulnerable ex-Muslims looking for work who would likely impress employers by pointing out that they could speak multiple languages on resumes, etc. That's a very good point. So if you are an ex-Muslim and you're from, say you speak Arabic and English or Urdu and English and whatever it may be, make sure, even if you're not a Muslim or ex-Muslim at all, make sure to market that well when you're applying for jobs. It can be an asset, even if you think it's not very relevant at the moment. You never know when it might be relevant, and you never know if the employer might think of it as relevant or not. For example, I can't give too many details, but I was working at a job, and there were a couple of refugees from an Arab background who walked in with someone who was helping them out, like not exactly a sponsor, but someone who was assigned to help them out. And everyone was struggling a little bit to try to understand what exactly they needed help with. And thankfully, I was within earshot, and I heard them, and I told them I speak Arabic, and we had a conversation. And I was able to help them out that day, and then I've met with them a few times since. But I wasn't hired on the basis that I know Arabic, but it came in handy that day. And it's not about that particular instance, but I'm sure it's an asset for the employer to have someone who speaks other languages. And believe it or not, that's something I noticed. Even if I'm talking to someone who doesn't speak either English or Arabic, like say their English is a little, I don't know what word to use here, but say their native language is not English, and English is a difficult second language for them, so they struggle with it a little bit. I find myself better at understanding and conversing with them than someone who only speaks English as a first language. I don't know what it is exactly, but I'm able to better guess what they mean or to better break down the words that I'm using. So point is, use that. That's a very good asset to show off when you're looking for jobs. And last comment, Saeed says, hi Aladdin, I like your animated videos on Muhammad. The ringtone is hilarious. Yeah, that's why sometimes videos take a long time. Is I write a script for a video, and then I'd be doing something else, like exercising or like, I don't know, trying to fall asleep. And then I have a thought for a joke that could go in the middle of the video. So I pull up my script and I write it there. So sometimes it takes a few iterations. All right, let's get to the next caller. The next caller is Generator Rex. I hope you are ready because I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Rex, how's it going?
Good, thank you. And you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, and I'm doing well. Thanks for asking.
That's good. All right, I'm not sure where to exactly start.
Wherever you feel like.
All right, so I left Islam around 14 years old. I grew up in the Middle East, and I'm still there, unfortunately. And over time, gradually, at first, it wasn't too much of a problem because I left around like summer vacation, but then school started. And I remember we were talking about things regarding our least favorite subjects, and I said something about Islamic education. And then a classmate rhetorically asked me, "What, are you an atheist?" And I was like, "Yes."
Wait, because you asked a question during Islamic education class?
No, I made a joke about doing something with the textbook, and
okay.
yeah, so after that, it wasn't a very, it was interesting because I managed to have a lot of conversations with my classmates, and we were a small class at the time, and surprisingly, nothing too bad happened. I mean, I got like one death threat, but whatever. And like, I actually had like one of them told me that I got them to doubt for a few moments, and like some of my questions got them to doubt. But a few, like, I moved to a different school, so I didn't have to deal with like a lot of the consequences that happened, and that this was also around COVID, so a lot of things worked out, I guess. Although last year, I remember I wasn't very, or sorry, last year in high school, uh, I was a lot more public about it, and the discussion started off about talking about animal rights, but then, a lot of questions, a lot of arguments they would bring up were related to the Quran. Like, okay, the Quran says this, which, usually can't deny. So at some point I just said, yeah, well, I don't recognize that. And I was already kind of bullied at that school, but then it got a lot worse after, I came out. And I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone to do it. I might probably take it back if I could. And it hasn't been like, I would just, someone would call my name and then they would like do a gesture with their neck and their finger, as in like a neck cutting gesture. Like that would
And
happen.
that's how old are they? Those people who made that?
Senior year high school students. They're on their
Oh,
way to going to universities. Most of them are practically adults. Well, practically legally, I guess.
so yeah, 17 or 18-year-olds giving death threats.
A sweet bunch of people. So I remember there was like a parent and parents meeting the school organized, and apparently a teacher told because I told my parents, like, I'm having trouble at school, classmates are doing this and that. Classmates, my parents were like, I remember talking about this with them about this one day, and they said, well, one of the teachers said that you were talking certain things about religion and you shouldn't have done that. And it was just odd to see how my parents would sort of tell me to just shut up. And well, like, I get that they're concerned and that they recognize that if I went with the flow, I would be in less danger. However, in they should have, like, like there should have been a recognition that the issue is not with what I said, but with the environment, the way it treats these things. So I feel like it would have helped if they were a little supportive of that. And thankfully, that was like the final year of school in general for me. So I managed to, I practically don't see any of these people anymore. Although Islam causes like a lot of issues, I get. Well, at least for me personally, with my experience, I feel like it's much harder to integrate or to just live every day, especially what like in general, but especially as an ex-Muslim or non-Muslim, um, to be an international felon practically, in legal terms, and to go back to that point where even if a country doesn't practice the death penalty for apostasy, the very fact that it's there just tells you a lot about the environment that allows for that to happen, that is born of that. And so in every day, it's sort of, you feel like a bit of an outsider. You feel like you shouldn't even be alive. You being alive is illegal. And in a lot of cases also, you mixing with non-Muslims feels weird. That is, if you encounter any, or mixing with the opposite sex can feel really awkward, and you don't know what kind of boundaries there are or shouldn't be, and you don't know if, like, sometimes at least for me, I would sort of overthink things. It's like, am I overstepping boundaries? Should I, like, am I looking at this girl too much? Am I making too much eye contact? And so the school that I went to for my final year, it's gender segregated. Before the entire school was like, well, the final school that I went to was gender segregated, and basically like the boys and the girls were in separate buildings. Although for our graduation, I wouldn't say it wasn't segregated, but you could make eye contact, which is like, wow, eye contact. And I saw someone, and I sort of started having feelings for her. And then I started university, and I found out that she also goes there. And I've seen her a few times, and I just couldn't bring myself to express that to her. And sometimes, I just want to add to this that I do recognize that sometimes there's a lot of projection when it comes to romantic feelings. There's this term called limerence, and it's sort of where we obsess over a person a lot of the time. But I just wish if I could express my feelings to her without feeling too anxious. And growing up with all of these things, like when a man and a woman are in a room alone, the devil is the third between them. I think that's a hadith, I believe. And just growing up with that kind of environment passively around you, the symptoms eventually show up. And yeah, I don't want to take too much time. This is all I have to share for now.
No,
Thank you for
that's
this.
okay. Yeah, no, I can relate with a lot of what you said, especially about the segregation and am I making too much eye contact or yeah, and the limerence and that kind of stuff. That also comes from, I feel like segregation adds to that because you build this narrative of what a female person is like because you don't interact with them enough, and then in the I don't know in the media where I grew up, there's all these incorrect ideas about romance and love at first sight and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I relate to a lot of that. Yeah.
Exactly, and this goes back to, I believe, what a previous caller also mentioned about how we don't really grow up with the healthiest examples of marriages, at least for most people. And so that also adds to it. And like you said, already with like the media's depiction of romance, like romance is its whole set of baggage. Add that with Islam, and
yeah, I could rant about that for a while, but I won't today. But yeah. I'm sorry that you had to face that in school. It's terrible, and I'm glad that you recognized what I said about it. That yeah, it's not healthy, whether or not people actually did try to physically kill you, which hopefully they didn't, but it still doesn't make it all go away. It's still a problem. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today? I really appreciate you sharing all this with us.
thank you. I just want to thank you for doing this. It means a lot, and I want to thank everyone in the audience. And take care. Have great lives.
Thanks. And hey, before you go, actually, quick question. Do you remember how you came across my channel or how you've heard of my channel?
Oh yeah, it was actually through a genetically modified skeptic video. You made an appearance there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the one, I believe, about types of atheists in American society or something.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you found it that way. Yeah.
And I'm glad that you make the content that you do.
Thank you. And, I will continue doing that. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Have a great life.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Genetically modified skeptic is based. Yes, he is. I really like, for those who don't know, genetically modified skeptic, Drew is his name. He has a very, very good channel. He's an atheist, Christian atheist, and he talks about a lot of issues with religion and leaving religion and his experience with it. I definitely recommend that you go watch his channel if you haven't already. Um, it's funny to me because a few years ago, I came across his channel and I've watched a lot of his videos, and it never occurred to me that someday I'll get to chat with him. And I did. We spoke for a very long time, and he used a portion of that in, obviously, with my permission and everything. I knew it was a recorded conversation, and he used a portion of that in one of his videos. And some people have found my channel that way. So I'm thankful to him for not only that, but for thinking of ex-Muslims and trying to find an example of one to interview. Um, yeah, but it's crazy to me that I admire his work and I admire his channel, and I never thought that someday I would get to talk to him or or do something similar to what he's doing. Um, yeah, he had a video called "His Lies Muslims Tell About Ex-Muslims" a while back. I really like that one as well. And yes, please everybody like this live stream and subscribe to the channel and all that good stuff. It really helps the channel grow. One thing a couple of things I want to comment on before I get to the next caller. It's funny today. A lot of the callers are mentioning how they left Islam or realized that it's not true or whatnot at a very young age. Like previous caller said, 14. I definitely had questions from that age, or maybe even before that. But I never arrived at the conclusion or the possibility that Islam is not true. Maybe it has to do with how obedient and submissive I was as a kid. Maybe it has to do with the environment I grew up in. Maybe it's all of the above. But proud of you guys for that. But I also recognize that it must make things extra difficult, possibly, if someone realizes it way too soon and they're not in a position to do anything about it and they face difficulty because of it. So it's not easy. Everyone has their own journey. So I'm not saying I wish I realized sooner, or I'm not saying I wish they realized later, but everyone's got their own journey in life. It's just it's commendable that some people have the faculties to think about things from a very young age, and yeah, it's good for them. And one more thing I want to mention. So the previous caller unfortunately said that he was bullied since he came out as no longer Muslim in his school, and that he wishes he could take it back, which is obviously very sad to hear. As a mental exercise, I'd like you to imagine, instead of the topic being Islam, if that person say it was a Muslim, and a Muslim said, I wish I never came out in my school, in some non-Muslim country, of course. I wish I never told people that I have a Muslim background. I wish I could take it back. How sad would you feel for that person that they're ashamed of part of who they are? Or maybe, I'm not saying the caller was ashamed, but that there's negative backlash to the point that they wish that they could act again or pretend to be someone else again. Now, as an exercise, think of, instead of it being about belief, what if it was a white passing biracial person, say someone with one parent who's African American, and one day it came out, or they told their friends that, yeah, I'm half African American, and they were bullied for it, and people would give them like this sign for it all the time, even though no one has tried to kill them as far as they know. And they say that they wish that they never told anybody. How sad would you feel for that person? So maybe that example would help demonstrate to a believer or someone who didn't quite get the feeling, how that might feel like. Now, we got two more callers. The next caller is Mehedi. Mehedi, if you're ready, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, Mehedi, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Yeah, I actually talked to you once last Ramadan. It was very quick during Seri time. This time works better for me. It's 10:42 in night.
Okay.
So I was very quick. I pretty much talked about my thought process that led up to me leaving the religion. Didn't get time to share what happens afterwards and what I'm doing now. You know, quick recap is that Yeah, there are a lot of reasons, and but one reason that always bothered me, and it still does, and I saw you talk to other Muslims about this as well, is about the concept of kafir. Um, how do you justify that? Because there are lots of things in Islam that Muslims will try to defend. A lot of barbarism or something that doesn't make sense. You'll have some sort of defense. But this is one thing that doesn't make much sense. Muslims and Christians who believe in hell and believe in the idea that people who don't believe in the religion should go to hell, because they don't seem to be able to differentiate between being wrong and being a liar. I just wanted to ask, have you heard anything in the last 1 year from any Muslim that would be remotely somewhat of a defense to this, to the idea of kafir?
So, to get the audience up to speed and to make sure that we're on the same page about this, so in Islam, a kafir is someone who knows the truth and hides it, or some believe that, knows the truth about Islam, knows that Islam is the truth and Allah is real and all that, but hides it, either because they have other reasons and they want to live as a kafir because it's easier, or because they're so deluded that they're lying to themselves, not just lying to other people. And I think that's a nonsensical idea, and that Islam is built on that. And that kind of justifies why kuffar go to hell, because they know the truth. Like, it's not that they're not aware that Islam is true, but they choose not to follow it for some reason. And that explains it in the mind of a believer. Now, did I hear something from a believer in the past year or so, or ever, that came close to a defense of this? Well, the closest, which isn't close at all, is believers who think that no, that definition doesn't really apply to everyone, and only Allah knows what's in people's hearts. And if you're someone who's genuinely not convinced of Islam, some Muslims believe that if you're genuinely not convinced of Islam, then maybe Allah is going to judge you by your deeds and you're not going to go to hell. I mean, that's one way to get out of it. But obviously, if you believe in everything that's in the Quran and a lot of the Hadith, you're supposed to believe that a lot of people are going to hell for not being convinced or not believing. So, yeah, that it doesn't really come close to me to answering that problem. But had it been clearer in the religion, like had it been clear in Islam that those who don't believe are exempt, they're not going to be in our system of heaven and hell, then that would be a different story. But that's not the case. It's very obvious that Allah really thinks and asserts, or whoever wrote the Quran, that people are genuinely just giving him the finger, kind of thing. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't think I came across something that resolved that issue for me. Have you?
No.
Yeah.
That's why it always bothered me, because even something that's really detestful, people try to defend it. They'll somewhat like make up some sort of defense. You can argue about it. You can take different moral philosophies and argue about things, but this one doesn't work at all. If someone is not convinced, they're not convinced. What can you do? Maybe try to convince them. If they're still not convinced, what can you do? There is no defense to this. The religion is not that convincing. The book is not that convincing. And then you have different completely exclusive ideas that claim the same thing, like the mainstream Christianity and Islam would claim the same thing. But you cannot be both. You cannot be both a Trinitarian Christian and a Muslim. It's not possible. And one would claim that if you don't believe in mine, you're going to hell. But neither of those ideas are that convincing on its own. So,
And
yeah,
you know what I realized in this journey, and it's kind of part of what snapped me out of religion. Even if I find a religion, like even if Islam was convincing to me, I would be aware that it might not be convincing to other people, and that's not their fault for not being convinced. And And as long as you are aware that someone can be wrong, but convinced with good faith, I mean, that they actually believe that they're right, you can't hold that against them as a moral failure, especially when you did a poor job of demonstrating why they're wrong. So I don't know. I haven't met a lot of believers who are aware that people can be honestly convinced of something else and believe that they deserve hell at the same time. There's a lot of cognitive dissonance to deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I also understand that people kind of thinks differently at different point in their journey with religion or politics and such. Because when I was a Muslim, I did not believe that people could be atheists. Like I could understand uh, doubting which God is true, but when someone would claim to be an atheist, I'd just think you believe in some sort of other religion. You don't want to say which one, because then I will criticize your religion. So you just claim to be an atheist, because then you don't really have much to lose. Because what am I gonna do? I'm gonna criticize Darwin. I saw people do that. Like someone says, I'm an atheist, then you criticize Darwin. You say Darwin was a bad guy, and it doesn't work like that. But if you claim to be from some religion, you believe in some religion, I know what to criticize and hurt you emotionally. And I don't know why, but I absolutely did not believe that someone could be an atheist. I think this sort of mindset works, that makes Muslims or Christians think that people who say that they don't believe, maybe they actually do. They're hiding. They're telling themselves that they don't. And I've seen it, some sermons and such. There's this guy who was not was is still quite popular in Bangladesh. He got into some political issues and he's exiled to Malaysia now. And I heard that
Zakir
one of his
Naik.
sermons where he
Is it Zakir
was
Naik?
no, it's something Azhari. I forgot his name. He was
Is that what they
super
all do? They
popular.
go to Malaysia when they're in trouble or something?
Yeah. For some reason, Malaysia is a hotspot for this kind of people. He got in
All
some
right.
sort of political trouble because
Okay.
our government is semi-secular, you can say, authoritarian. You
Right.
don't go into quarrel with the government, and you're fine. That's how it works. So I don't know
Right.
what he did, and he got into trouble. So he is kind of he was kind of considered cool guy, because your typical mullahs are not popular among young people, because
Hmm.
they have beard and they talk into this old-fashioned way. The young people don't find them cool, but this guy was kind of cool. He would speak in half English, half Bengali. He'd tell a lot of stories, and a lot of nonsense stories, but our people don't know that these stories are nonsense. They're like really laughable stories. But I was listening to one of his such stories where he told a bunch of stories where the summary is that people know that Allah is true when they fall into some sort of trouble. Like he was telling a story where he was in a ship. It was full of people. There were Muslims and non-Muslims, and the ship, fall into a tornado or something like that. And everyone was praying to Allah. Even the Hindus are praying to Allah. He told a bunch of such stories. I don't know. He
I've heard
convinced
these
himself.
stories. I've heard similar stories from like religious teachers in school and everywhere in life. It's just funny that they happen to run into these miracles and amazing situations and no one else does. But yeah.
Yeah, he told like multiple of the stories, and when they tell it, like they're good at speech. Like they're very good at convincing people of their stories. So when people listen to these things, they're also convinced that those Hindus actually knows that Allah is true, but maybe because of social pressure, or they're telling themselves that it's not true. So yeah, but when they're in a trouble, big trouble, then everyone says Allah, Allah. It's funny,
Of
but
course. Yeah.
it helps perpetrate this idea that
Hmm.
kafir, that's a true thing. Kafir, people are kafir. People can be kafir, and there are lots of kafirs, enough to fill up the hell.
To be clear, it's not exclusive to Islam. It's very prevalent in Islam, this idea. But I've also heard Christians who claim there are no atheists in foxholes. The idea that during
Yes,
the war, like everyone was praying to God when they're in danger, there are no atheists. But yeah,
yeah. Like I was
yeah.
never afraid of hell because it never made sense to me that like I know there are lots of Muslims or Christians or people of different religion who are afraid of hell. Like I
Mm.
never considered myself to be that bad of a person that I go to hell. Not bragging, it's just like I never killed someone or anything like that, so that doesn't
Well,
make
some
sense. So I was
people
never
like
afraid of hell.
myself, I felt like it didn't, it was not because I felt like I was such a bad person that I deserve hell. But when the God is so sensitive and strict and all that, you worry that even small transgressions might add up and end up in hell. Like that's a lot of these narratives that we learn, is that you could make one mistake and end up in hell. But I'm glad that you didn't have that fear.
Yeah, for some reason I never had this problem, but when I was living Islam, I was not really afraid of hell, but I was afraid of being wrong. I was afraid of finding out after I'm dead that, oh, I was wrong. So it's sort of
Mhm.
like, I was wrong. Not really that I will go to hell, but I see a lot of people who are afraid of hell. I hear a lot of this experiences and fear that the other ex-Muslims tell you on the show, and I, I hear there's this clip in YouTube. I think Sam Harris was debating some Christian preacher or something, where he talks about like how many of the people from the audience have lost a night's sleep thinking about the Muslim hell, the Islamic hell. Like no one, no one loses a night's of sleep afraid of some other religion's hell. It's always your own religion's hell. And I think that should be a very good indicator that it's not about it's not fact. Hell is not fact. It's you're afraid not because your God is giving you a hint that you're wrong. It's just psychology.
Mhm.
I don't know the specifics, but people are always afraid of their former religion's hell. That people should consider this when they're afraid of hell. They cannot leave the religion because of hell, or if you have some sort of trauma or fear of hell, you should ask, like, why am I only afraid of my religion's hell? Yeah,
Yeah. Hopefully that works for a lot of people. Some people, unfortunately, they fall into some sort of religious OCD or obsessiveness where now they're afraid of multiple religions hell. Like hopefully that doesn't happen to people, but for others it snaps them out of it. Maybe.
yeah. Yeah. To be honest, I didn't listen much of this ex-Muslim live streams in the last 1 year, simply because this experiences can be really emotional. Like it kind of
Mhm.
bothers me when I listen, especially when women tell their stories. It's real much more difficult for them because I think parents are more concerned about their girls growing up non-religious. Like I didn't have much issues with my parents, not so far. I'm 26 and I have a decent job, and I I'm not religious, right? Not even in house, not much. I just pretend a little, bare minimum, you can say. But girls, I see and I hear that their parents expect them to be more religious in their attire, and they're supposed to pray because they're afraid uh, about the future of their girls. Because women are expected to be more religious, at least in appearance. They just they have to appear more religious, otherwise, they
Well,
won't be.
there are a lot more restrictions on women's in appearance, but also in a lot of ways of how they interact. Like if you go to the secular world, how a Muslim interacts, how a Muslim man interacts with other people is very similar for the most part to how he would interact with other people in the Muslim world. But a woman with the freedom to interact like a man for the most part would be really out of line in the Muslim world, unfortunately. So that's why they stick out. Even though, like, if you were a girl and doing exactly what you're doing right now, you'd be sticking out a lot more.
Yeah, I think also I seen families that are kind of secular or even
Mm.
not very religious. I know like parents not very religious, but they want their daughter to be somewhat religious because they're afraid what's going to happen in the future. Would their daughter be considered not good for marriage to like a good household? I'm talking about my country and the social
Mm.
circumstances and the conservative nature and everything. So there is more expectation, even in a secular household.
Mm.
Daughters are supposed to be more modest, even if parents don't think that should be necessary.
Yeah.
So, okay, for me, I'm just pretending that's the part I don't like. I'm pretending bare minimum. And something interesting that I have noticed, a bunch of my friends don't really believe. I found out in last 2 years or so, as I kind of started talking to them, I started observing their behavior, which is interesting because I never picked my friends. These are really old friends. Religion was never a relevant part of our friendship. And I noticed they're not particularly religious, and there are some who you think they're religious, but start talking to them, they're even more critical of religion than me. But they're pretending. Pretty much everyone pretends. And a friend recently married a hijabi girl, and I asked, "How's it going?" And he says, "It's fine because he's not religious and his wife's somewhat religious. It kind of balances out the outlook. You know, you're living in a conservative society. If you don't, like, no one in your house wakes up during Ramadan at 3 a.m. and starts cooking and eating, your neighbors are going to think that's not acceptable. Like,
That
it
is the
doesn't matter
community
you fast
policing
or
I
not.
mentioned. Like that is kind of community policing, right? Like people keep tabs on each other in that way, and not even intentionally because God commanded them to or something. It's just so normal that they would notice that someone is not behaving like the rest of the group. Their lights are not on around suhoor time. Then they would notice. I didn't even think of it that far. That's difficult.
Yeah, like imagine you have guests. You have guests during Ramadan, and they're expecting you to wake up at early morning and have seri, and no one is waking up. What's the guest gonna think? That's
Hmm.
going to be difficult. Like it's so much about appearance because it doesn't really matter that much you fast or not. You tell people, yeah, I'm fasting. Like I see so many people who don't really fast, but they pretend like me. Like today, I went to a market with someone. I assumed he was fasting. He pretends pretty well. And it was lunchtime, and he asked me, "Are you fasting?" Because he wanted to have some food. And later we had lunch, and I thought it was cool. It was interesting that he doesn't fast, but you'd never imagine that this guy doesn't fast. So a lot of pretending going on. Like I have friends who are very critical of religion when talking to me or other people who thinks like me, but then they'll pretend so well to be to be religious, and it's really, I guess we have to pretend to to live to survive in such a society, because if I don't appear in the mosque, at least during the Friday prayer, it's going to be difficult to survive in this society. I'll just get silently excommunicated. Like, no, nothing legal. No one will come to beat me as long as I'm not criticizing anything. It's just that I have to do the bare minimum, and I can never explicitly profess my apostasy. That's the thing. Like, people will know through your behavior, the things that you say, the things that you're critical about, that you don't believe. Like, you don't believe. People know that you don't believe, but they don't want you to spit out that you don't believe. And
I
I'm
hope that
stuck.
someday you don't have to pretend as much. I mean, imagine you and your friend were both hungry that day, and imagine if you had said, "Yes, I am fasting," because you're pretending to. Now you're both just hungry, and you lost out on a chance of someone to eat with every now and then or relate to. So I'm glad that you told him, but I hope that happens on a bigger scale. And in the meantime, it's good to be careful and not get yourself in not get yourself is the wrong way of phrasing it. Not get in a situation where you're ostracized or facing more difficulty.
Yeah, I think I figured out the playbook now. Just bare minimum pretentiousness. I don't really like it. Like, I don't really have any struggle in my life, to be honest, other than this one. That's why maybe I'm thinking too much about this one, because I see my friends do well just pretending, and yeah, but I don't like it, but I'm doing it. Uh, and when I get a chance nowadays, I had this idea that people should just leave their religion, and I should just tell them all the bad things that's there in the book. But I found it to be more effective to people that I know, when I'm talking to people face to face, just raising doubts, you know, because most people don't know much about their religion. They just only know what they've heard. And whenever I get a chance, I just very carefully try to raise doubts. Some funny hadith mentioned this one here of someone talking about some ritual. Just mention something that some leads to some sort of short discussion that won't harm me, but will make them doubt. And I had success with this. I'm confident that I have two friends who were very religious, that I was able to make them doubtful. They're still religious, but it's nothing orthodox. They don't believe in the standard narrative at all. They're hardly Muslim, and that I have fun with this, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't know if I would um, absolutely recommend that people try to go out there and sow doubt, but I get where you're coming from, and I've done that in the past before I even became ex-Muslim, ironically enough, and not intentionally, and not even by bringing up specific funny or bad hadiths, but just having discussions with some of my Muslim friends that I trusted more to be at least open minded, or someone I can have a discussion like that with. And I'd ask them about how they resolved the issue of free will and predestination and other similar questions. And some of them would tell me later, like, dude, that gave me a lot of doubts, or it made me think a lot. And yeah, maybe I don't want to think about this topic anymore, or something of the sort. But I haven't intentionally tried to do that. But my approach is different. I'm in a different environment, so I can afford to have a different group of friends where I don't have to pretend as much. I don't have to try to make allies out of them. So I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, my
Mm.
approach is to point out the inconsistencies in approach. Like, I wouldn't, I'd never like mention that the prophet married a 6 years old, how bad it was. I somehow I'd ask, what's wrong if we today marry 6 years old? What's wrong with that? Like, what's the, someone will say like it's a different time. What do you mean different time? We're not talking about fashion statements like hairstyle that went out of fashion. What makes it not okay today? You know, sort of, kind of not being very offensive. Try to
Yeah.
beat
It's
around the bush somehow, somewhat you can say, and make them
so
think.
that way you don't have their defenses up about Muhammad when you're talking about the act itself rather than the person.
Yeah, but I'm more interested about like practicality of things, practicality
Mm.
today. What makes something good today and not good today, and how the examples that the prophet set for
Mm.
us. How did this change? What should
Hmm.
change and what should not change? And how do you become consistent in that approach?
Right.
Because different actions are not consistent. Like different actions are justified in different ways, and it's not consistent which hadith you believe, which tafsir you believe, which translation you take, what you consider moral or immoral, what you consider eternal moral behavior, or what should change over time. There's inconsistencies, and I like to point out inconsistencies, and at least in my experience to my friends and sometimes my colleagues, I saw success with this. That they can see sometimes that there is the inconsistency in justification, the way people justifies different controversial things of their religion. And yeah, that's what I like to ask them, but to be consistent in their approach. If you don't like this hadith, why not? And do you apply this exact criteria on all of the hadiths? Then where we are, you know,
Right.
uh, it's a lengthy process, and it often doesn't work, but sometimes it makes people doubt, uh,
Mm.
and can make the common effect of that is being doubtful of hadith, which makes them much more liberal. Because as I said, I'm more interested in practicality. I don't mind my friends, if my friends remain Muslim. It's the behavior. Like if they
Mm.
think it's okay if I'm not fasting, like I want to bring them to this position. I don't expect a lot. I expect some changes, and if I can make some differences, maybe eventually I'll be able to live in a better condition in this country. Things will be better, not
Mm.
ideal, but just better enough. You know.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. I try to remind people that the point of this channel, for example, is to it's not to remove as many people as possible from the religion, but to make people aware of certain issues that either they see and ignore or they don't see at all, or to so that people can coexist better, whether it's by them denying part of their religion that is responsible for this, or removing it from their belief system. That's fine. um, it's not really about leaving the religion per se, but it's about finding some middle ground that works. Yeah.
Yep. That's all. I don't really have anything more. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm
And
happy you called.
people that are really struggling, the reason I don't usually listen to your live stream, you know, I don't know what to say to them. Often I don't really have advice. I try to think what I'd do if I was in that position.
Well,
Yeah.
that's okay, and that's something I want to mention to people. You don't have to watch these live streams. Like, say you're in a good place or a bad place. That's on its own. That's not enough to tell you whether you should watch these live streams or not. If it makes you feel like it's bringing up a lot of bad emotions or something that either you haven't been through and you don't want to feel very strongly, or you've been through and you don't want to feel again, or it's a time for you to heal and you don't want the reminders. These are all good reasons to not watch these live streams. So there's absolutely nothing wrong to not being here, contributing once and then never again. So the way that you did it, that works for you, and that's fine. And I'm glad that you came back. But even if you hadn't, I'm glad that you watched it all. Yeah.
Yeah, my cowardly advice just would be to be like me, to just pretend, and when you feel safe, you can live more independent life. Especially if you live in the West, I guess eventually you can get out when you're adult, when you're making money, and if your family is not that welcoming, you can maintain maybe a bare minimum connection with them. But yeah,
Yeah.
that may be sort of a cowardly advice, to just pretend, to not raise your
I mean,
voice.
I wouldn't call it that. I think there's just everyone's in a different situation. You need to do the math for your own situation and find out what's best for you, long term and short term. So if what's best for you is to put in the bare minimum and pretend a little bit and deal with the discomfort, that is good. That's what you need to do. For other people, they have to get out of the situation immediately. For others, they can't pretend anymore. So it really depends. So prioritize your well-being over just taking a stance on coming out just for the sake of it or out of principle. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call, and really appreciate you doing this. I really like your approach to
Thank you.
to this.
I'm glad you
Thank
do, and hope you have a great rest of your day or evening. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks again to the caller. Couple of things I want to note and a couple of comments, and then we'll get to the last caller today. Uh, about the topic we're talking about, it's funny how I think that most religious people are honest when they tell you what they believe. I think most people in general, if most people in general are honest about many things. So if they tell me, I believe what you're doing is the work of the devil and you deserve to burn in hell and blah blah blah, I believe that they're being honest, right? And in a way, I empathize. But on the other hand, they believe that I'm being dishonest, or a lot of them, like the ones who believe that a kafir is someone who knows the truth and denies it, or that there's no atheists in foxholes, that atheists are just lying and they're actually theists, but they're lying about it, all that kind of stuff. The accusations of the person being dishonest and the intention of the person are coming from the group who wants to label you as the out group. It's coming from, in this case, the theists. Well, on the other hand, I'm saying no, those people are honest in their beliefs. They may be wrong about what they believe. It may be a harmful belief to have, but I believe them when they tell me what they believe. And the problem is, if they believed us when we told them what we believe, they might run into the cognitive dissonance that they have to face about this person genuinely believes that God doesn't exist. Does that make them a bad person just for that? So it's just a rationalization to make them more at ease with people going to hell, is to think that the people are responsible for them going to hell. So yeah, that's something I wanted to note. And the cat, Apu, jumped on my shoulder. He's still on the desk. You can't see him. I didn't want to interrupt the caller, but he does that sometimes. And I can sort of sense when I see him getting up and looking at me, he's eyeing the shoulder, giving him that look. I just have to go down a little bit and give him room, and he jumps on it. It's very cute. But it's he doesn't sit on, and then he sat on my lap for a bit. He doesn't do it if I ask him to. Like if I put him here, he won't sit. He has to do it. Like cats teach you about consent. Not that I needed to learn about that part, but they really reinforce that very often. But yeah, he's adorable. And someone I don't know why I thought of this. I've gotten a lot of accusations since the very beginning that I've started this channel or whatever platform it was first for clout, because people will give me attention and clout and money and all sorts of things because I'm talking smack against Islam or making up lies about Islam and all that kind of stuff. where's my clout? I've been promised a lot of clout. No, what I mean to say is they're so wrong, because this is very hard work that doesn't equate to the amount of attention that they think it does. Not that that is my motivation, but if it were, I'd be out here reading Quran every day for Ramadan and watch the live stream. I would not have been kicked off of TikTok. I'd just be getting donations everywhere, right and left. I would be, especially if I said, "Hey, I used to be an atheist and now I became Muslim again, and look at me," and I started reading Quran. People would love that stuff. If I was looking for clout, if I was looking for community support, for admiration, for fandom, all that kind of stuff, for get rich quick kind of things, um, there are people who've had GoFundMe campaigns. I'm not doubting the authenticity of whether they needed that money or whether they had a difficult situation to deal with or whatever it may be. But they've had GoFundMe campaigns in which people raised more money for them in that one campaign, the community, right? Because that's part of love bombing in the community, or maybe for good intentions. They raised more money for them than I've made on YouTube and Patreon and everything combined for as long as I've been doing this. Now, that's not me complaining. That's just pointing out that it's just a tactic to silence people who want to talk about this issue, is to accuse them of knowing their intentions and that their intentions are bad. Kind of like, I know that you actually believe in God, but you're lying. I know that you're doing this for money or for fame, but you're lying. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I will continue to do this for as long as I can. And if someday it becomes financially viable for me to just do YouTube, I will continue to do that, because not because of the money, but because I think that it is a worthy cause. I'm not at that point yet, but because of your support, a lot of you, and because of just your viewership and commenting and just helping me push the videos further in viewership, I'm getting a lot closer to that. Nowhere near close to that, but at the very least, it's enabled me to go this far for this long. And I hope that it's shown in the quality of my content, the frequency, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just thankful to everyone for helping me do this. Let me read a few comments, and then I'll get to the last caller. Gamer Shreyas, thanks for the super chat. They say, "Thank you, brother, for spreading the truth of Islam." Something I want to note here, just in case this has certain undertones that I don't want to spell out specifically, because I don't want to accuse anyone of anything. Some people think that, like, they support me because of the same reason they support, for example, David Wood, especially if they have a similar faith to him or something. They think that I am doing this to bring down the devil that is Islam, the Antichrist that is Islam, and that'll solve all the problems in the world, and this and that. And I'm not accusing the commenter. I'm just making that clear. That's not really the intention of this channel. I've explained a lot what the purpose of live streams like this are and videos like these, and it's less about taking down or exposing the truthfulness of the truth of Islam, or all these headline making sort of clickbaity titles. Though I've used them before, I would like to say ironically to draw people into actually listening to what I have to say, but that's not my approach, and that's not what I'm trying to do exactly. I'm trying to tell people the truth about what a lot of us go through. I'm trying to show them the side of Islam that they don't want to acknowledge, or that I think is problematic. But it's not a coordinated fight with certain other entities that do it in favor of their religion or their political ideology to take place or something, or because they see Islam as the antithesis or the enemy of that. It's not the same motivation at all. Huey Freeman says, "Would you collab with genetically modified skeptics? Same approach to content." I have indeed appeared on one of his videos. I was talking about that earlier in the stream. If you haven't seen it already, I don't remember the exact title, but it was something like different types of atheists in American culture or something of the sort. But I hope to get to work with him someday again. I really admire his work, and he seems like a very nice person, and I sure hope so. All right, now getting to the last caller. The last caller. I'm sorry I can't pronounce your name, and I've misspelled it in the private chat, so I'll let you introduce yourself. Adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going? You are muted at the moment. I hope that you are. Oh, okay. All right. They are away from the computer. So that's no worries. I got a vamp for another minute or two. So what would you like me to talk about? Let's see. Let's see if there's a comment I should highlight. Oh, yeah. Nasiha says, just noticed you're almost at 15,000 subs. Yeah, we're at 13 something, which is amazing. So thank you all for that. And, please help me go even higher, because I heard that once you reach a certain threshold of views or subs or whatever, it starts snowballing a little bit more. But I understand that this is a niche community and a niche kind of topic, so it's not really the same as making videos about some popular topic and I just need the clicks and everything's going to work out after that. I know that there's a lot more to it than that, but yeah, we're getting there. I made a poll earlier in the community post asking people what they expect the channel to be at by December of this year, and I don't know if a lot of people thought I was asking what they hope the channel would be at, or if they really have that high of an expectation. But most of the people who answered by a large margin said that they expect the channel to be at 30,000 subscribers by the end of the year, which would be amazing. I'm hoping for that. I'm aiming for that, but I wouldn't be too disappointed if it was lower than that. We'll see. And thank you, Malek, for this super chat. Malek. Malek says, thank you, Aladdin, for making a safe space for us. Love to all my fellow ex-Muslims. Very flattered that you complimented me that way. Thank you. Okay, last caller is ready. I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
Fine, you?
I'm good, thank you. You're incognito. You don't have to turn on the camera if you don't want, right?
No, I turned on the camera because I think I need body language to express myself better, but also I have to hide my identity, so that's how I came up with
Sure.
this no mask. I also suggest if you have problems, hiding your identity or something.
No, I can't hide it any more than this, and people have already seen this, so yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
that's also related to my nickname because it's Atkisiyla Dolasan means the man with the scarf. And yes, I have a scarf right now. I love scarves in general. Hello from Turkey. I'm connecting here from Turkey. And thank you for letting me in for these
of course.
chat and everything. And thank you also. You were Arab, right? You were from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Well, not from Saudi Arabia, but I grew up there, yeah.
But you're Arab at the point. Because I've been very keen on the Arab atheists ever since I left Islam and became an atheist, because I thought I was like 16 years old something. Oh, it's even hard being an atheist here in Turkey. It's like supposedly secular country. How hard should it be for the Arabs and everything? And I also saw refugees coming from Syria. They were running away from ISIS and all other Islamic extremists, and they were also saying that they gone irreligious and everything. I empathize with them very long before, and I also have an inclination with the Arabic language. That's why.
Yeah. Interesting. Go ahead. Sorry.
Because I've always been keen on, but I saw there were very few people, and when I saw you, Arab atheist, I should click and follow to learn from them and everything, because they have these stereotypes like Arab equals to Islam and everything. We have to debunk this stereotype, right?
Yeah, I would love for people to drop that association eventually, that someone can be Arab or have like a Muslim sounding name and not be presumed Muslim. But for now, they're not people are not wrong in that presumption, because Muslims always present themselves that way. But hopefully someday, someone could be called Chris and not be a Christian.
Yeah.
Someone can be Arab and not be presumed Muslim.
Because this is a serious issue. Intelligence services makes these propagandas. Remember the U.S. occupation of Iraq, and they said there is Islamic fundamentalism and camel driving Arabs. We have to educate them. No, you are mixing two different things, man. I mean, both sides do it when they emphasize with the Islam, or they try to protect Arabs. They say don't do Islamophobia, as if this is the same thing. And also the opponents, they say when they criticize Islam, okay, that's good, but they appeal to national SOs and they say, oh, primitive Arabs, camel driving and everything. I mean, why are you confusing these two things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they are also close to the atheists in the Arab world and everything. And they are being mocked. Nobody's, hearing them or everything. They say Islamophobia or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should hear them and let them speak. That's why I came across your channel, and thank you for your content. And the other issue is I left Islam, like when I was 16 years old or something. And I have been questioning a lot of things since then, especially from the time I knew myself. And everything was, dogmatic, and everything religion was dogmatic. The other things as well, like nationalism, patriotism. You have to, familial values also ingrained in Islam as well. I don't know if you know, like you can't cross your legs in front of your parents if you have come across with such a thing.
Yeah, because like you can't have the bottom of your foot or the bottom of your shoe like in front of your parents. Yeah, I think there's a lot of emphasis on parents and obeying the parents despite no matter what they do, kind of thing. And I think some degree of respect and admiration is good, but they don't leave enough room for merit-based respect. Like if if those parents have done something wrong, or did they earn this kind of respect, or is it just given to all of them, including the abusive ones, for example? And to what degree is it harmful? Yeah, it's that much is missing.
Yeah, that and everything, when you go to the military and you die, you became a shaheed. Like you became a martyr and like that. But if you don't believe in religion, that doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I'm also told that I have to go to the military when the time comes. The conscription is mandatory here. Because if you die at the war, you are a shaheed. You're a martyr and like. But if you don't believe in that religion, that doesn't make sense at all. And the more intriguing part is that even the people don't believe in religion still say that the shaheed and everything, not like you go to heaven, but that's an important thing to die for your country. And I began to question why is everyone thinking so dogmatically, and in the center, that's religion, not the only cause, but this is intertwined with religion, the nationalism, and when the national march is played upon, you have to stand up and wait like that because our martyr grandfathers died, right?
There's a lot of similar themes. I don't know which came first, chicken or the egg, but there's a lot of similar themes and mechanisms, and the way that people unconditionally accept one can either tie into or cause them to accept the other. So, yeah.
I mean, I saw this, the religion and ideologies and nationalism flag, this. And I think we have to get rid of them. Like 2 years ago or something, I thought I turned into a nihilist. Eventually, it was the conditions, circumstances forced me that way. I thought first the archaic values have to be stamped out, so as to move forward and get rid of the bullshits we struggle in right now, because you have Salafis and they want you to turn back to the 7th century, man. If you don't fight the dogmatism, if you think mediocre ways, in Arabic it's called wasat, right?
The sort of like the in between, the middle, yeah.
We are, because we are so get used to think that way. Vasat. In I also say vasatism. Nobody gets that, but mediocre ideas get spread. That's vasat. We have to get rid of that, and that's how I turned into a nihilist. I rejected everything. I think we have to transform everything so as not to get cut short by the 7th century Salafis one day, because this is a serious issue, right? We have to
Right.
struggle against. And when I say this because the people still say that this is not real Islam. You got it wrong. There's no such a thing. So you ask what's real Islam, they tell something. It's like 21st century and Islam is peace, blah blah blah. But if you don't pay attention to these important issues, then you get cut short at the end. If you get used to this mediocre Wasat thinking, so we have to get rid of it. That's why. And you know the recent earthquakes in Turkey.
Yeah.
I mean, this that's interrelated to the topic. That's why I get here. Ever since I got nihilist, I have very easiness coping with these issues as well, because I think, yeah, nothing has an inherent value, so that we shouldn't be stick to the taboos, rather it be religious or anything else, so that we can think more clearly. And at the moment of the earthquake, I was in my hometown, and yes, my hometown was one of the places it affected from the earthquake. It was like 70 seconds or something. And this really helped me to cope against the earthquake. I just wait. Okay, at the last, I can die and I can get rid of the, paying the rents, paying the bills, the conscription. I mean, I saw the religious people, I mean, my aunts and everything. She was screaming and crying, pray the Ayatul Kursi, the Ayatul Kursi.
Mm-hmm.
Pray the Ayatul Kursi so that the God will help. And I was really silent. I was waiting, I can die and get rid of paying the bills, paying the rent, applying in a shit job, going to conscription, and under the soil, I'll be sleeping. I mean, this nihilist thinking really helped me cope with the earthquake at that moment. But I also saw how religion empoisoned the society at that moment, because there's an important issue, live or die issue, and people are like, thanks to the religion, pray the Ayatul Kursi, God will help us. I mean, that's not the appropriate way to cope against the earthquake, right?
I mean, I don't know. Who am I to tell people what the appropriate way to deal with a crisis is, especially if I'm not in it? But there are ways that it might have helped them have hope. I mean, till they were proven to be wrong. Like, say someone is missing and they have hope that they will find them, till eventually they don't find them, perhaps. I don't know. But sometimes, obviously, it makes people panic more. Like, I, for example, have had nightmares about the end of the world and resurrection and all that kind of stuff, and it might involve earthquakes or something that traumatic. So if I were to experience an earthquake and I was still a believer, that's what it would remind me of, and the fear of hell. But maybe for someone else, it might remind them of the peacefulness of heaven that is to come if they die. I don't know. It's difficult to weigh in on that. But I've seen ways where people have managed to retain their faith in God, and maybe in a harmful way, like either blame someone for the earthquake, for God being angry at them, or shouting God's name when they find someone, not realizing that God had, according to his plan, predestined that this person would be under the rubble. Yeah, it's a very difficult topic, and I never wanted to come off like someone who's preaching to those people how they should cope with a crisis. So I never really talked about that.
I mean, yeah, you're right. But at that moment, there is a society, there are millions of people suffering from this, and some of them are Muslims, some of them are not, some of them are Christians. In fact, one of the cities affected was Alexandria, the center of the Christians. Maybe you may have heard.
I've heard of that city, but I wasn't totally aware of that. No.
I mean, that city was close to my city as well. the first place, the first church ever established, and it's like the Muslims have Hajj and Christians have pilgrimage as well. They go to there, and it was very bad affected. I mean, imagine there are Christians there are Muslims, atheists, blah blah blah, and if you appeal to Islam at that moment, maybe it might help Muslims, but it won't help atheists and Christians. So under these circumstances, like earthquake and flood and famine and thirst, I mean, people are lacking the basic necessities. If you appeal to religion, it will only backfire and you ruin everything. I realized this at that moment. Okay, you pray in inner self, but in public spaces, that's not how we cope with the problems, I think.
Mhm. Well, as long as you find something that works for you, I mean, nihilism seemed to have worked for you in that situation, and I'm glad you're safe, and hopefully everyone else is safe. And yeah, as long as you find something that works for you and doesn't harm other people, that's the main focus. Yeah.
But I mean, I did not impose my solutions onto others at that moment.
Right.
But I mean, there were government officials, and they said in the public speech, they said the ones died go to the heaven. I mean, as a public official, you shouldn't say that. You should concern that people are maybe not Muslim. Some of them are Muslim, but the head of the religious ministry, we have our own ministry like that, said you can take the kids from the earthquake, the still surviving ones, and you can marry them. Yes, he said something like that. I mean, at that moment, I realized that's not the appropriate way. And this is a public official, head of the Ministry of Religion in Turkey. They are committed
And that's
to
Turkey. That's like supposedly kind of not the worst Islamic country out there.
Yeah. But even in Turkey, the circumstances are this, and the ministry is often accused of being, reformist and moderate by the Muslims. Considering this, they said this, and they are committed to Hanafi fiqh, Ahl Sunnah. I mean, you can't solve the problems appealing to religion in the public sphere, be it Christianity, be it Islam, be it anything other. Okay, you pray in the home, but in public sphere, and even under these crisis situations, we shouldn't cope with situations like that. At that moment, I realized how religion poisons the society in the public sphere. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, no, I hear you. I hear where you're coming from. It's just sad to me that is still happening today. Like that a man would come out and a government official would say, because of religious reasons, yeah, one valid solution to dealing with orphans is as soon as they qualify, get them married off. I mean, what can you expect? The Prophet did that. So, like, what example are they learning from?
I mean, once you start to ridicule, you can't know where it might go. That's why, and I also recommend other ex-Muslims and atheists and like to look upon nihilism. Maybe it might help them cope with the problems, because there's a lot of suffering, especially if you live in a Muslim community and you're an ex-Muslim, non-Muslim, you're a murtad, and you know how murtads are to be treated. We go cutthroat. I mean, there are lots of hardnesses, and if you embrace at that moment that nothing has the inherent value, we are going to die at one day, maybe then you might become fearless and cope with the problems. And not like I say nihilism is like a philosophy. I mean, in the Western philosophy, they define everything in an atomic worldview, define the morality, define the ethics, blah, blah, blah. Not like that. I mean, if you oppose the given circumstances, the mediocrity, then that makes you a nihilist. If you look upon the Russian nihilists and the like, that makes sense.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, nihilism is it's hard to define what it is, and the version of it that you're saying helped you. It might not be exactly what someone runs into if they just Google nihilism, but you've made your thoughts clear on how it helped you. So hopefully, if someone does find that interesting, they would explore it.
Yeah, I mean, and there are other ways to cope against these problems as well. Just like to give another example, I also practice karate here. I mean, because the moment I realized there are lots of problems, not just religion, but like the one you have to stand up during the national marches, or else you might be get lynched if you live in a populist society like that. And I think whining about the problems won't solve it, so I have to start somewhere. That's how I began karate, and it gave me confidence. I'm now yellow belt. I really like it. Maybe the other ex-Muslim, non-Muslim, murtad dealing with these problems, it might help to them as well. I don't know. Just to suggest to
Well,
keep them.
does it help in just the way that any exercise would help, or is there some meditative value to it?
Yeah, I mean, you know the yin yang, right? The Japanese black and white.
Yeah, can you explain what do you mean by that?
I mean, have you seen the circle?
Yeah, I've seen the symbol, the half black, half white with
Like
2 dots in it. Yeah.
that's yin yang, and the karate it comes also from the yin yang. It's called karate do. I mean, do means way, path in the Japanese, like way of living. They also teach you that way of living if you come across a great sensei. Sensei means master in the Japanese, by the way. I mean instructor. He
Mhm.
tells you like being fearless. It's taught. They say. I mean, it has a meaningful philosophy that helps you. They say every parity is intertwined. Like they say, black is embedded in the white, and white is embedded in the black. Everything is united. That's why in the circle, you see black and white. They also tell you bravery and humbleness are intertwined. You should be brave and humble at the same time. These values are thought, and also they thought like that life and death are intertwined, and when you became fearless of the death, then you became immortal. Of course, that's a metaphor, but they say, I mean, you come to a balance, they mean. And that also helped, and other things also helped. So it really helps to find friends and get over issues. I feel very much more safe compared to the past. It also helped me focus on the other issues like my studies. I study economics at the university to concentrate better. I mean, there might be other solutions. Maybe you can find, the other guys can find, just to remind the others.
Well, I hope that some of these solutions might work for someone else, but I'm glad that they also have worked for you.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
I mean, yes,
Yeah.
because we are responsible for our own lives, right? I'm saying this at the moment that's because I wear the snow mask. I know I'm responsible for everything right now. If I'm get blacklisted by some fundamentalist or something, you have to reconsider every possibility instead of like playing the victim and complaining about the problems. Okay, we have to know problems in order to solve them, not complain all the time, because it doesn't help solve the problems, right? I mean, because when you're a murtad and you are offered the cutthroat, okay, you have to put the problem seriously, but then you have to find solutions to protect yourself. This is jungle, man, right?
And it's unfortunate that survival,
Yeah,
for some people, they never face what feels like a jungle. For others, every day is a jungle. I agree that if it's not just about raising awareness of the issues, everyone should also take some degree of personal initiative and try
yeah,
to do something about it. That's different for every person. Not everyone has the
yeah,
same capabilities or situation, but you
yeah,
should always do, let me phrase it this way. You should always do the most you can to look out for yourself. That includes changing your situation if you can.
yeah,
So nobody should stay stagnant forever, but I can understand if someone, it takes them longer, or it's difficult for them to get out of a situation. But you have to do as much as you're capable of.
yeah. That's my
Yeah.
point. And it's, I mean, speaking of the karate issue, it also helps you to embrace this philosophy that makes you fearless and everything. It's opposed to the Western style of solving the problems, take the pill and be okay. No, they teach you to be robust and strong and acquire the things from the hard way, and that pleasure, that struggle, adventurous journeys. That's why I suggest what I know it might not suit for everybody. What else? Yeah, these are all. Thank you for inviting me in.
Of course, I'm happy that you're able to join today, and I hope that you continue to find ways that make you more prepared for dealing with your surroundings and happier in your nihilism as well.
Thank you, thank you.
Mm.
And let me tell, long live Arab Enlightenment, man.
Yeah, long live Arab Enlightenment and all sorts of enlightenment as well. Yeah.
I mean, I think that this century will be the golden age of Arabs to get rid of all these religious dogmas and archaic feudalism. I know because even in Saudi Arabia, the atheism is 6% or something like that. When murtads are being killed and atheism is equitable with being a terrorist, right?
I'm not sure about these statistics, but I know that yeah, if you take a public stance, especially as a citizen of Saudi Arabia, yeah, it's there's punishment for that. Yeah.
I mean, let me tell you, the Richard Dawkins book, The God Delusion, was downloaded in Saudi Arabia, 13 million copies, let alone the original copies of the book worldwide is 5 million.
I wonder how many of them were hate downloads, but there must be a lot of also, people who wanted to read it for, to read it, not just because they hate it. But yeah, that's a big number.
I mean, that's an issue. I also saw other people like you and Rana Ahmad, and there was some guy, Raif Bedevi. He was also imprisoned in Saudi Arabia for, promoting atheism or something like that. I think this issue is gonna be settled, and if I'll have time and money, I'll be able to learn Arabic so as to communicate with other Arabs like you. I hope.
Yeah, I would never raise myself to the same degree of struggles or impact that Raif al-Badawi has had, but yeah, I hope that someday, I hope that with every day there's a lot more of us Arabs and non-Arabs, and I think yes, this century is going to be a century of enlightenment out of Islam for sure.
I mean, that's also an issue, and it might sound silly why I'm keen on Arab atheists, but I study economics, and I also like history. We study history of economics the last year, and it started from the origin of everything, like ice age and dinosaurs. It started from there, and we came across religions, everything. We saw Spaniard Arabs, we studied them, and we also saw how they changed Europe by promoting ideas like atheism, materialism, secularism. I was shocked to see that there were lots of Arab philosophers promoted. They criticized Islam, Christianity. They said God is irrational, something like that. I mean, it was also mentioned in the class that that's why Europeans hated Arabs in that age. Because they saw them as kafirs, infidels, because they promoted these ideas. But those ideas laid the foundation for Renaissance and Reformation. And I also checked out these things, and yes, it was true. Like Ibn al-Mari was also atheist. Ibn al-Bajjah, lots of Arabs promoted atheism, and I was proud to see it as an Arabophile and the admirer of the Arabic language to debunk this Arab equals to Islam and everything bullshit. That's why.
Yeah, I hope to read more about that someday. I definitely, my information about that is lacking probably compared to yours. So it's an interesting topic.
I mean, I might share the link from another space or something like that. It was titled as "How Godless Arabs Changed Europe for Good," something like that. I might share the link if you want. And I also liked your cat, Al-Qattun. That's how you say in Arabic.
The what? Sorry, say that again.
Al-Qattun.
Al-Qatt. Yeah. My
We
cat.
also
The
learned
cat.
it from the history of economics. It was said that all cats are descendant from Arabia, and the cat word is coming. Yes, I'm concerned with these details, but I'm a history geek, man.
Yeah.
I also have 3 Qattun, but in my house, they're so sweet.
Cats are really peaceful, I find. At least the ones that I have. I know some cats can be very devilish, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's all I can say. And may the force be with you
Thank you.
if you like the Star
And
Wars.
believe it or not, I still haven't watched a single one of them, but I get the reference.
You get the reference.
Yeah.
And to point out, everything will be good for everyone, us, the world, and also for Arabs. Allahul alam ve bis sawab. Did I say that correct?
Well, that's Allahu a'lam bil. Say that again.
Allahul alam ve bis sawab.
Bisabab or bithawab.
Allah knows for the best. I
Oh,
tried to say
okay.
Allahul alam ve
Okay.
bis sawab. And I say
It's
this for the
mm,
Arabic Enlightenment. Long live Arabic
mhm.
Enlightenment. Long live the Arabic atheists like Aladdin and everyone. Stay strong. And bye bye. Thank you for
Thank
letting
you.
me in.
Of
Bye
course.
bye.
And have a good night. Bye bye. All right. Thank you, everyone, for a great live stream. We went on for, I said, less than 3 hours, and we managed to finish in less than 3 hours. So thank you for that. And he would like to say bye. He's been here the entire time. He's one of my best supporters because he's always here in the corner watching or on my lap. Anyway, it's funny how when you learn a lot of languages, the word for cat is one of the words that you learn first. So, at least in French, it was always le chat. Yeah, or al qit. Anyway, I hope everyone's Ramadan is going smoothly. If you haven't broken your fast yet, I hope it's not too long till you get to break your fast. And yeah, I appreciate everyone for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And be on the lookout. There's another live stream next week that is going to have a special guest that has been on the channel before. So that's a clue. And there's going to be a lot more content this month. And as always, think critically and think for yourself.